Most people spend their entire lives trying to escape suffering. They medicate it, distract from it, reframe it into nothing, and they stay stuck in the same patterns for decades. The Vedic texts had a completely different read on this. Suffering isn't the problem, it's the most precise signal your life will ever send you. Miss it, and you'll repeat it. In this video, I'll show you number one, why suffering is a feedback mechanism, not a punishment, and what it's actually pointing at. Number two, the specific type of suffering that contains the exact insight needed to end it. Number three, a practical method to stop resisting what's happening and start extracting what it's teaching you. Let's get into it. A man I spoke with last year had lost his business, his marriage, and what he described as his entire sense of who he was, all within about 18 months. He told me he had done everything right: therapy, journaling, gratitude lists. He was managing the pain, but he wasn't moving. What he said next stopped me cold. He said, "I keep trying to get past this, but I don't think I'm supposed to get past it. I think I'm supposed to go through it." He didn't know it, but he had just articulated something the Vedic sages spent centuries trying to teach. The Sanskrit word for suffering is dukkha. Broken down, it literally means a wheel with a bad axle. The wheel keeps turning, but the ride is rough, grinding, off center. That image is not accidental. The ancient teachers weren't saying life is painful because the universe is cruel. They were saying something is misaligned, and the friction you feel is the evidence of that misalignment. Western psychology has been catching up to this for decades. Post-traumatic growth research, the work of psychologists like Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, consistently shows that a significant portion of people who go through severe suffering, loss, illness, collapse, report meaningful positive change on the other side. Not in spite of the suffering, because of it. Clearer values, deeper relationships, a stronger sense of what actually matters. But here's what the research doesn't fully explain, and the Vedic framework does. Why does suffering produce growth in some people and not others? The answer is whether the person treats the suffering as information or as an enemy. When you treat suffering as an enemy, your entire system mobilizes to defeat it. You numb, distract, suppress, or intellectualize. You get very good at managing the symptom, but the source stays untouched. The Vedic texts are blunt about this. Avoidance doesn't dissolve suffering, it stores it, and stored suffering compounds. When you treat suffering as a signal, the question changes. Instead of, "How do I stop feeling this?" you ask, "What is this feeling pointing at?" That single shift in question is the difference between a person who grows through difficulty and a person who simply endures it. The man I mentioned earlier, the one who lost everything, had been asking the wrong question for 18 months. He was asking how to get past it. The moment he switched to asking what it was showing him, everything opened up. He realized the business had been built on proving something to people who would never give him the validation he was looking for. The marriage had been built on the same foundation. The suffering wasn't random, it was the precise consequence of living out of alignment with what he actually valued for years and finally hitting the wall. Not all suffering is the same. The Vedic tradition makes a distinction that modern psychology is only beginning to articulate clearly. There is the original pain, the loss, the failure, the rejection, and then there is the secondary suffering, the story you build on top of the original pain. The original pain is often unavoidable. Someone you love dies. A relationship ends. You fail at something you cared about. That pain is real and it deserves to be felt. But the secondary suffering, the "why me?" the "this shouldn't be happening," the "I'll never recover from this," that layer is almost entirely constructed. And that constructed layer is where most people live for years. The Vedic concept here is ahamkara, the ego identity, the part of us that has a very specific story about who we are and how the world is supposed to treat us. When reality violates that story, the ego generates suffering as a protest. It is not suffering because the situation is objectively unbearable. It is suffering because the situation contradicts the ego's expectations. This is where it gets precise. The Vedic teachers said, the specific nature of your secondary suffering tells you exactly which attachment is running you. If you are devastated by rejection, you are attached to external validation. If you are consumed by financial loss, you are attached to security as your primary identity. If you cannot stop replaying a past failure, you are attached to a self-image that cannot tolerate imperfection. This is not blame. This is a map. The suffering is not punishment for being attached. It is the mechanism by which attachment reveals itself to you. You cannot see your attachments clearly when life is going well. They are invisible then. Suffering makes them visible, and visible means workable. When you are in the middle of how to deal with suffering, most advice tells you to reframe it, to look on the bright side, to find the silver lining. That is not what I'm describing. Reframing is still avoidance in a positive costume. What I'm describing is excavation. You go into the suffering, not around it, and you ask, what does the specific shape of this pain tell me about what I am holding on to that I cannot afford to hold on to anymore? The man I mentioned earlier did this work. He sat with the devastation of losing his business and asked what it was attached to. What came up surprised him. It wasn't the money, it was the identity. He had built successful entrepreneur as the entire structure of his self-worth. When the business went, the self went with it. That was the real loss. And once he could see that clearly, he could actually grieve the right thing and start building something that didn't depend on external proof to feel real. There is a practice in the Vedic tradition called vairagya, which is often translated as detachment or dispassion. Most people hear that and think it means not caring. It does not mean that. Vairagya means not being controlled by outcomes. It means you can be fully present with what is happening, including the pain of it, without being consumed by the need for it to be different. The practical version of this is a three-step process. It is not complicated, it is difficult, which is different. Step 1, stop fighting the fact of it, not the cause, not the person responsible, not the injustice of it, just the bare fact that this is what is happening right now. The Vedic texts call this santosha, a kind of radical acceptance of present reality. Not approval, not surrender, just acknowledgement. This is what is true right now. Most people skip this step because it feels like giving up. It is the opposite. You cannot mind a situation you are at war with. You have to stop fighting the existence of the pain before you can learn anything from it. Step 2, get specific about where the friction is. Not, I'm suffering because my life fell apart. That is too broad to work with. Where exactly does it hurt? What specific thought triggers the sharpest pain? What is the story beneath the story? This is the excavation work. You are looking for the precise attachment, the exact belief, the specific expectation that reality is violating. The more specific you get, the more useful the information becomes. Step 3. Ask what this is preparing you for, not what it is taking from you. This is the frame flip that changes everything. Suffering in the Vedic model is not random, it is corrective. It is the universe or your own nature or karma, depending on your framework, redirecting you toward alignment. The question, what is this taking from me, keeps you in loss. The question, what is this preparing me for, opens a door. This is not toxic positivity. You are not pretending the loss isn't real. You are choosing to look for the signal inside the noise because you understand that the signal is there, that it has always been there, and that extracting it is the most efficient way to actually move through how to deal with suffering rather than around it. The man I've been telling you about used this process over several months. He stopped fighting the fact of what had happened. He got specific about where the real pain was, the identity loss, not the financial loss, and he asked what it was preparing him for. What came back was clarity he had never had before. He had spent 15 years building a business he thought he wanted. The collapse forced him to ask what he actually wanted. The answer was completely different from what he had been chasing. He is now 3 years into work that he says feels like the first thing he has ever done that was actually his. That is not a coincidence. That is the mechanism working exactly as the Vedic teachers described it. Suffering, fully engaged with and mined for its teaching, does not destroy you. It redirects you toward what you actually are. That three-step process sounds straightforward on paper, but applying it to your own life, to the specific suffering you are actually living with right now, is a different thing entirely. If you have tried sitting with your pain, asking the right questions, doing the inner work on your own, and you are still circling the same patterns, still feeling stuck in the same place you were 6 months ago, the fastest way through this is a real conversation. Not a course, not more content, a conversation. I offer free one-on-one consultation calls, 30 minutes, no pitch, completely personal. We look at exactly where you are stuck, what the specific friction is pointing at, and what the clearest next step looks like for your situation. You will walk away from that call with something concrete, a direction, a reframe, a next action. whether we ever work together or not. The link to book is in the description at dailymindreset.com/consultation. If any part of this video landed for you, that call is worth 30 minutes of your time. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking delivered straight to your feed. What is the one piece of suffering in your life right now that you have been trying to get past instead of going through?